Go and open your fridge, and somewhere in the crisper drawer, you will find a bag of spinach starting to turn and a tomato gone soft on one side. You are not going to eat it, and you are not going to throw it out either, because that means wasting money. So it just sits there and rots. Japanese households do not have this problem, and it is not because they own better fridges or bigger kitchens. It is the complete opposite. Their fridges are smaller than American ones with less storage, and yet somehow far less food ends up spoiled. The reason is 12 Japanese fridge habits that Americans break every single week, and most Americans are breaking at least half of them without knowing they exist in the first place. Learn them, and you stop throwing money away every time you clean out that crisper drawer. The first habit I will show you is the one you break every time you unload the groceries, and it is why half of what sits in your crisper drawer is spoiling twice as fast as it should. And number 11 is an old Japanese habit that makes some of your food taste better on day 3 than it did on day 1, which sounds impossible until you see why it works. The first Japanese fridge habit Americans break is loading the fridge as if more food inside means better storage. In a Japanese kitchen, the fridge sits at around 70% capacity, deliberately underfilled so that cold air can move around inside it, and the freezer sits packed solid. In an American house, it goes the other way, where the fridge is crammed to the door after a Saturday grocery run and the freezer has 3 lonely bags of peas rattling around inside it. The milk in the door is not sitting at the temperature you think it is. A fridge cools by moving cold air, and if you have built a wall of Tupperware in front of the vents, the back stays properly cold while the front and the door can run several degrees warmer than the display suggests. Meanwhile, your half-empty freezer has to re-cool that entire empty air volume every time you open it, which is why the ice cream you bought last month has crystals across the top of it. Every time you open a stuffed fridge to find something, the door hangs open longer, and the thing you are looking for is behind 3 other things you also bought on Saturday and then forgot about by Tuesday. The Japanese logic is that a fridge is a cold air machine, so if the air inside it cannot move, then it cannot cool. Pick one shelf tonight, empty it completely, and keep it empty as your working space. In the freezer, fill any dead space with bags of ice or frozen water bottles until it is solid. The next habit is the one that decides whether your milk actually makes it to the date on the carton. The second Japanese fridge habit Americans break is treating the inside of the fridge as if every shelf is the same temperature. In a Japanese home, the fridge is mapped as a gradient, where the door is the warmest spot and only holds condiments. The top shelf is the most stable and holds cooked and ready-to-eat food, and the bottom back corner is the coldest and holds raw protein. In an American house, the milk is in the door, the eggs are in the door, and the raw chicken is on the top shelf slowly dripping down onto the yogurt. Everything ended up wherever there was room the moment you were unloading the bags. The door of your fridge swings between around 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit every time you open it. That is the exact temperature range where dairy spoilage bacteria double in a couple of hours. Meanwhile, the top back of your fridge, which is genuinely cold and stable, is holding the pickle jar you last touched in the summer. The gallon of milk you keep in the door goes off 3 days before the sell-by date, and every time it happens, you blame the grocery store. It is not the store. You have been storing your milk inside the warmest, most unstable spot in the entire fridge. The Japanese logic is that your fridge is not one temperature, it is 5, and the habit is to use all 5 of them on purpose. Move the milk to the top back shelf tonight, move any raw protein to the bottom, and let the door hold condiments only. Do it once, and it stays done. Now the drawer at the bottom of the fridge, the one you have always called the vegetable drawer, is quietly doing the opposite of what you think it is. The third Japanese fridge habit Americans break is trusting the crisper drawer to be the right home for anything that came from the produce aisle. In a Japanese fridge, the vegetable compartment is deliberately warmer than the rest of the fridge, held around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it sits in the middle of the fridge rather than the bottom, so that chilling sensitive produce has a home that is not working against it. In an American fridge, you get one drawer at the bottom, labeled crisper, and it runs colder than the main compartment because cold air sinks, and that is where you have been storing every single item from the produce section. The problem is chilling injury. Tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, basil, avocado, and sweet potato all evolved in warm climates, and they all start spoiling below around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The cold breaks the cell membranes from the inside. The texture turns mealy. The smell that makes a tomato smell like a tomato just fades out. Lab testing on 32 refrigerator models found that even the warmest crisper drawer measured came in at 43 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not a little too cold. That is well below the temperature the tomato starts spoiling at. The tomato you brought home firm and red on Sunday and threw away pale and mealy on Thursday did not rot. Your crisper drawer spoiled it from the inside, and you paid $4.99 for the privilege. The Japanese logic is that cold is a treatment, not a preservation method, and half of the produce aisle does not tolerate the treatment. Keep tomatoes, avocados, basil, potatoes, onions, and garlic out of the fridge entirely. Move cucumbers, peppers, and eggplant to the top shelf where it is a little warmer and eat them within 4 days. Everything else can stay in the crisper drawer. If these first few habits are already changing how you look at your fridge, I've put all of the habits Japanese families use across the rest of the kitchen and home into a book, and it's over at thejapanesemethod.com. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to get your copy and start transforming your house and kitchen today. Now, temperature is what spoils your produce from the inside. The next habit is what gravity does to it from the outside, and it is probably the most photogenic habit in the whole video. The fourth Japanese fridge habit Americans break is laying vegetables flat when they were designed to stand up. Japanese home cooks store produce in the same orientation it grew, which they call teitat hozan. So asparagus goes upright with the stalks sitting in a shallow glass of water, leafy greens go vertical in a tall container, and carrots, leeks, and green onions all stand up. In an American fridge, everything is laid flat inside the crisper drawer, so the asparagus rolls to the back and goes limp by Wednesday. A vegetable laid on its side after being picked spends its remaining sugars trying to right itself, and it burns through the reserves that would otherwise be keeping it firm and sweet. Every single bunch of asparagus you have ever bought spent its final week in your kitchen trying to stand up inside your crisper drawer and losing. The Japanese logic is that the vegetable does not know it is food yet, so you should store it the same way it grew. Keep a tall jar with about 2 inches of water in the door of the fridge for asparagus and herbs, use a vertical container for leafy greens, and change the water every couple of days. Standing your vegetables up is only half the job. The other half is what you wrap them in, and most Americans are doing the exact opposite of what actually works. The fifth Japanese fridge habit Americans break is wrapping produce with a one-size-fits-all approach. Japanese home cooks wrap different vegetables in different materials on purpose, using damp paper around leafy greens, dry paper around mushrooms, and newspaper around root vegetables, because every category of produce has a different moisture problem. In an American fridge, you get one strategy for everything. Whatever the store put it in is where it stays. Leafy greens dehydrate and go limp in dry air, but sealed into plastic, they sit in their own condensation and rot from the bottom up in 3 days. Mushrooms left inside the plastic clamshell, they came in sweat, go slimy, and end up in the bin on Thursday. Damp paper around greens gives up moisture as they need it, and dry paper around mushrooms drinks up the moisture they are giving off. Newspaper around root vegetables blocks, light, and buffers humidity. That is why potatoes wrapped in a paper bag will keep for a month, while potatoes in a plastic bag are already sprouting after 10 days. That plastic bag you left the spinach in is not preserving it. It is a small greenhouse, and every hour it sits in the fridge, it is getting closer to compost. The Japanese logic is that bare produce sealed in plastic is sitting in its own sweat, and the answer is to wrap for the specific moisture problem the vegetable actually has. Buy a roll of unbleached kitchen paper, put a damp sheet around your greens, put a dry sheet around your mushrooms and herbs, and keep your root vegetables in a paper bag in the coldest part of the pantry instead of the fridge. That is what to wrap produce in. The next habit is about what to keep it away from, because one single item in your fruit bowl can wreck an entire drawer of what you just wrapped. The sixth Japanese fridge habit Americans break is putting apples right next to the broccoli. In a Japanese kitchen, ripening fruit is kept well away from leafy greens, cucumbers, carrots, and herbs, usually on different shelves. In an American house, the fruit bowl on the counter has apples and bananas and tomatoes piled on top of each other, and the crisper drawer underneath has a head of broccoli sitting right beside an apple that rolled in there last week. The reason is a plant hormone called ethylene, which acts as the ripening signal. Apples, bananas, avocados, tomatoes, and stone fruit all give it off. Leafy greens, broccoli, cucumbers, carrots, and herbs all react to it, and the reaction is faster aging. One apple sitting in a drawer with a head of broccoli will turn that broccoli yellow twice as fast as it would have gone on its own. A banana next to an avocado will ripen the avocado overnight. A tomato next to a cucumber gives you a bag of soft, sad cucumbers by Friday. The broccoli that turned yellow before you had a chance to eat it did not turn yellow because you were slow. It turned yellow because an apple sitting 2 feet away from it told it to. The Japanese logic is that some fruits speed up the aging of everything near them, so the answer is to keep them out of range. Keep apples, bananas, tomatoes, and avocados together on the counter and away from your other produce. Keep your leafy greens and herbs alone in the crisper drawer. If you buy apples by the bag, keep the bag in a separate drawer of its own. That is what the fruit is doing to the drawer. The next habit is about what the packaging is doing to everything, and it is the single biggest reason that 77% of Americans admit they throw food away because they forgot it was even in there. The 7th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is leaving groceries in whatever packaging they arrived in. In a Japanese kitchen, everything gets moved out of its original bag, its cardboard, and its branded plastic and into identical clear containers on the way in the door. The lid gets marked with the date it was opened, which they call kaifubi. In an American fridge, the tofu is still in its plastic tub. The half onion is in a Ziploc bag that is now opaque with condensation, and the leftover chicken is bundled in aluminum foil from Wednesday. Any date printed on the packaging refers to when the store received it, not to when you opened it, so those dates are meaningless. You cannot manage what you cannot see. Roughly 90% of the food Americans throw out gets thrown out because it went invisible, pushed to the back of the fridge, and forgotten inside opaque packaging. That is the entire 103 pounds of spoiled food and $2,800 a year. 4 spoiled items a week is 4 dinner plates of food going straight out of the fridge and into the garbage, all because you did not know it was in there. The half a rotisserie chicken you meant to turn into a salad on Wednesday is still in the fridge on Sunday because it is hidden inside a grocery store bag, and every time you open the fridge this week, your eyes slid right past it because that bag looks like every other bag in there. You paid $8 for the chicken, and then you paid another few minutes of your attention every day for a week to not see it. The Japanese logic is that store packaging is designed to catch your eye in the aisle, but fridge packaging has to catch your eye inside the fridge. Buy a matching set of clear containers and decant everything into them on your way in from the store. Keep a grease pencil or a roll of masking tape on top of the fridge and write down the date you opened it, not the date the store printed. 2 weeks in, you will genuinely wonder what you were doing before. That is what everything gets stored in. The next habit is about where each of those containers actually goes, and it is the one that turns your fridge from a place you dig through into a place you scan in 3 seconds. The 8th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is having no fixed home for anything. Japanese kitchens run on a principle called teichi, where the eggs are always in the same spot, the miso paste is always in the same spot, and the leftovers are always on the same shelf. It is the same 5S logic that Toyota built its factory floors on. There is a place for everything. Everything is in its place, and if the item is not in its spot, you know at a glance that you are out of it. In an American fridge, everything ends up wherever there was room when you were putting it away. So the eggs are on the top shelf sometimes, and in the door other times. And the leftovers are behind the milk one week and behind the orange juice the next. 2 costs stack up every time you do this. First, there is decision fatigue, because every unloading session becomes 20 small decisions about where things go. Second, there is invisibility, because an item without a fixed position gets buried inside a single shopping trip, so you end up buying a second jar of miso paste because you were sure you were out of the first one, and now the first one goes bad before you ever find it again. The 2 jars of the exact same mustard sitting in your fridge right now are the direct evidence, because you bought the second one on the belief that you were out. You were not out. You just could not see the first one. That is a $5 mistake, and you have been making that mistake in your own fridge for a decade. The Japanese logic is that if it is not in its spot, then you are out of it. Spend 10 minutes on a Sunday afternoon and pick one specific location for every category. So dairy, condiments, leftovers, protein, and produce each have a spot. Put a strip of masking tape on the shelf edge if you have to. Now a 3-second scan is telling you exactly what you have and exactly what you need, and you will stop double buying inside a month. That is how you finally see what is in there. The next habit is the one moment where most Americans undo the entire system, and it happens right at the moment you finish cooking dinner. The 9th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is treating cooling as a weight instead of a step. Japanese home cooks call it samaru, and it is the practice of cooling food to room temperature before it ever goes into the fridge by pouring it out of the deep pot it was cooked in and into a shallow tray on a wire rack on the counter, where it sits for 20 to 40 minutes until it stops steaming and goes in. Americans do it in one of two extremes, and both are wrong. Either the pot of chili gets slid straight into the fridge at 8 in the evening while it is still steaming in the middle, or it gets left out on the stove overnight to cool down and only makes it into the fridge in the morning after 8 hours in the bacterial danger zone. When you put a hot pot straight into the fridge, that pot is holding enough heat to raise the temperature of the whole fridge by a few degrees for about an hour. During that hour, everything on the shelves next to it, the milk, the yogurt, the eggs, and the leftover chicken, is being pulled up into the bacterial growth zone and held there without you noticing. That 1 hour is shaving 2 or 3 days off the shelf life of every item next to it. Do it twice a week for a year, and it is the reason your milk keeps going off before the date on the carton. Leaving the pot out on the stove overnight is not any better, because the accepted safe limit for cooked food at room temperature is 2 hours, and 8 hours out overnight is a bacterial culture experiment. The milk that went off 2 days before the sell-by date last week did not go off because the dairy aisle was old. It went off because on Sunday you slid a warm pot of pasta sauce onto the shelf above it, and for the next 45 minutes that sauce warmed the milk carton, and you never noticed. The Japanese logic is that hot food inside the fridge is basically rating the expiration date of every other item on the shelf. Buy one wire cooling rack and one shallow sheet pan or wide glass dish, which is going to cost you around $20 total. When something comes off the stove, pour it out of the deep pot into the shallow container. Set the container on the wire rack and set a timer for 30 minutes. When it stops steaming and the sides feel warm rather than hot to the back of your hand, then it goes in the fridge. A 2-liter pot of soup is cool enough in about 25 minutes this way, while the same soup left in the deep pot takes hours. Now you have a fridge where every item has a home, and a technique for putting food into that home without spoiling everything already in there. Here's what the Japanese are actually putting in on a Sunday afternoon, and it is the habit that turns a whole week of dinners from a chore into an assembly job. The 10th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is treating the fridge as somewhere to store the food you already cooked, rather than somewhere to stage the food you are about to eat. Japanese home cooks call it tsukurioki, and once a week, usually on a Sunday, they run one 90-minute session that produces 5 or 6 small prepared dishes into matching containers. So a batch of blanched vegetables with a dressing, a pot of simmered root vegetables, a jar of quick pickles, some marinated eggs, and a protein or two are all ready to go. Dinner during the week then becomes assembly rather than cooking. In an American house, you cook something fresh every single night. Some of it ends up as leftovers you do not really want the next day, and those leftovers sit in the fridge for 4 days before you throw them out on Sunday. Then Sunday you go shopping again and the whole cycle restarts. The trick with tsukurioki is that each dish stays separate from the others. You did not cook Wednesday's dinner on Sunday. You cooked 6 components that combine into a different plate every night. So Wednesday is pickles, egg, rice, and greens. And Thursday is a different combination of the same 6 things. It is a different meal each time from the same fridge, and nothing sits around getting old before it gets eaten. The reason you order takeout on the nights you meant to cook is not that you are lazy. It is that your fridge is presenting you with raw ingredients at 7 in the evening on a Tuesday, and raw ingredients are not dinner, they are a decision about dinner, and you are too tired to make that decision one more time. A Japanese fridge does not ask you a question at 7 in the evening. It answers one. The Japanese logic is that the fridge is a staging area, not a storage area, and once you make that shift, the whole rhythm of your week changes with it. Give it one 90-minute session on a Sunday, use 6 containers, and prepare 1 protein, 2 vegetables, 1 pickle, 1 starch, and 1 sauce. And there is something about food you cooked on Sunday that nobody ever mentions. Some of it does not just survive the week, it genuinely gets better. The 11th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is treating leftovers as second-place food. Japanese cooking has a whole category called jabasai, which means the always stocked dishes, and it includes quick pickles, marinated eggs, and namono, which is simmered root vegetables. These are dishes designed specifically to sit in the fridge for 3 to 5 days, because that is exactly when they hit their peak. And day 3 is when they actually taste the way they were meant to taste. American culture treats every leftover as apologetic food, where the pasta from Tuesday is worse on Wednesday and the stir-fry from Sunday is a little sad on Monday. In a marinated or simmered dish, cold storage is continuing the cooking. Salt is migrating deeper into the cell walls. The flavors that were sitting on top of the ingredient on day 1 are inside the ingredient by day 3. The fridge is doing real work for you. You just have to know which dishes to hand it. The reason your leftovers are worse the next day is that you are cooking the wrong kinds of dishes to be leftovers. You have been throwing away the best version of your own food on day 3 without ever having tasted it. The Japanese logic is that some food peaks in the pan and some food peaks in the fridge, and once you know which is which, cold storage becomes a process rather than a countdown. Start with 2 dishes, quick pickled cucumbers made with rice vinegar, salt, and a strip of kombu, and soy marinated soft boiled eggs, and make both of them on a Sunday. Taste one on Monday and the other on Wednesday. You will taste the difference for yourself, and you will never look at your fridge the same way again. The 12th Japanese fridge habit Americans break is the biggest one, because it inverts everything the rest of the video has been about. Japanese households shop for groceries 2 or 3 times a week in small volumes from a smaller local store, and what comes home today is getting eaten within the next 48 hours. The fridge is a staging area for the next 2 dinners, not a warehouse for the next 2 weeks. American households run in the opposite direction. One giant Saturday Costco or Walmart run with 2 weeks of groceries in a single cart, buy one, get one deals on produce you were never going to finish, and a fridge stuffed for exactly 1 afternoon before it starts leaking value out of the top. Every food product started a clock the moment you brought it home. Buying 2 weeks of produce at once means the entire back half of that purchase is racing against you from Saturday afternoon. The American food waste research keeps landing on the same number, which is 30 to 40% of all food purchased in the United States going straight into the trash. That is not a discipline problem, it is a volume problem. You bought too much, and it was going to spoil starting from the day you brought it home. The Costco run you take because it saves you money is costing you around $2,800 a year in spoiled food thrown out of the fridge. That is the entire savings. You are not shopping in bulk. You are paying wholesale for the privilege of throwing food out at retail. The Japanese logic is that the fridge is a staging area for the next 48 hours, and every hour past that it is fighting you. Shop twice a week for what you are actually going to eat in the next 3 days. Once a week, on a Saturday, cook only from what is already left inside the fridge before you go and shop again. You are going to spend roughly the same amount of money, and you are going to throw away almost nothing. After a month, you will notice that the food actually tastes better because none of it is 4 days old anymore. Not a single one of these 12 habits is really about preventing spoilage. That is the whole point. The Japanese built a fridge that never gave food the chance to spoil in the first place. If you want a fast way to work out where to start, you can ask 3 simple questions about anything sitting in your fridge tonight. Can you see it at a glance without moving anything else? Is it in a spot that is the right temperature for what it is? And do you have a plan for it in the next 48 hours? Anything that fails any one of those 3 questions is what ends up in the trash on Sunday. Pick the crisper drawer as your one thing tonight. Take the tomatoes, the avocado, and the basil out of it and put them on the counter. Come back in 3 days and taste the tomato. Then tell me in the comments which habit surprised you the most and what you found lurking in the back of your fridge when you actually went and looked. Now check out the video appearing on your screen right now. I think you'll find it interesting. I'll see you soon.